show. Rock would have loved this. He really would have loved this. He looked forward to being here. He expected to be here. And as Studs Terkel once said, hope is the last thing to go. And he had hope right up until the end. He knew most of you. He looked forward to this very much. I knew that Monty's resolution was supposed to be a surprise, but I let the cat out of the bag and I told Rock about it. Because his oncologist wasn't that sure he was going to make it this long. And he was just so touched and so honored that this was put together in his name. I asked him, what would you like to have in it? Because, you know, as a brother, you don't think of your brother having done that much, right? And so I thought, well, what do you want to have in there? And the main thing he wanted to have was that he spent 30 days in jail, in San Bruno County Jail, for disturbing the peace. In 1964, there were a number of demonstrations at the Sheraton Palace in San Francisco and along Otto Row on Gary Boulevard. There was still a lot of discrimination at that point in hiring practices in the hotels and the automobile dealerships. And the NAACP was doing demonstrations, and a whole bunch of kids from San Francisco State got together. And pretty soon it became a pretty big demonstration, it became a national spotlight was put on it, and it actually made a difference. They started to have quotas for hiring practices, and I think Rock told me on the side one point that he thought maybe that they had demonstrated in front of the wrong dealership because that particular one wasn't as bad as the others. But it actually brought about a lot of change, and all the things that he wanted to be remembered for was not the Grateful Dead so much, but having done that. And I know that, I think he got that from his father. It's hard to know Rock without thinking, if you want to look up somebody, because his name's not well known, Milton Mayer, M-A-Y-E-R. And he was the guy that actually brought us here to Carmel. We could have been somewhere else because my mother was married before to somebody in Seattle, Washington, who owned a paper box company up there. He'd inherited it from his father, and he didn't want to do it. My mother was terribly unhappy with the whole situation, and she fell madly in love with this Milton Mayer. Milton Mayer called himself an unemployed newspaper man because you had to get work from job to job, and although he worked for the Associated Press for many years. And one of the things he was very interested in, besides civil liberties, which he was very much a peace activist for many years, was education. So when he got the two of us, he was going to make sure that he was going to put us in the most alternative, new age schools, if there was such a thing at that time. And the first place he sent us was to the University of Chicago Laboratory School that John Dewey had set up. And we were there for a couple of years. And he wanted to write a book about Germany from the standpoint of 10 ordinary Germans, how they could become Nazis. His view was that it wasn't a German problem, it was a human problem. That all of us could slide into being Nazis or fascists or resort to force or violence just as easily as the Germans could. But he really wanted to find out how this all happened. So he took us along and he stuck us in this little school in Marburg, Germany, an old university town. And we went to a Rudolf Steiner school. Nobody spoke a word of English. We didn't speak a word of German. And by Christmas time, we had to really get by. By that time, both of us. And this is a time not long after the war. We were still playing in the ruins of Germany. So the kids have a lot of ambivalence about Amis. Amis were Amerikaner, and we are Amis. So they liked us because we had access to the PX and the commissary and all the food they couldn't get that was rationed. So they loved us, they loved the blue jeans, but we were the ones that had bombed them. And we were playing in the ruins of their buildings. So it was not that easy a time, especially Rock. I was a lot younger. I was 5 and 6, and Rock was 4 years older. So he took a lot of heat from the older kids who were pretty brutal. I remember times when we got chased around and scuffed up a little bit, which wasn't so terrible, but one time one kid threw a dart and stuck right in Rock's forehead. I think he learned a lot from that. He learned how to talk his way out of a lot of problems. Rock was a good talker. He was something of a hustler too, a little bit, but in the best sense of the word. He was always in the service of getting something really fun done, something exciting done. He could organize anybody. When I first read Tom Sawyer, I got to the point where, you remember the whitewashing of the fence scene? And he was given this as a punishment, and he thought, oh, this wasn't just any ordinary fence. This was like 9 feet tall and 30 yards long or something. And within a short amount of time, his other friends would come along and say, well, what are you doing there? He said, within minutes, Tom Sawyer had these kids thinking that this was the most fun thing to do. And by the end of it, they were paying, giving their marbles and their little treasures and their things so that they could actually do it for him. And I read that, I said, that's rock. And it really was. Rock could get you to like to do something that you had no idea that you'd like to do. He was a hustler. I remember I learned the first time when I was young enough to have some coins, but still not old enough to know what they were worth, right? In great earnestness, he convinced me that the dimes were much smaller, and he would trade his nickels for my dimes. That was the first, I think the last time he really hustled me. I saw him do it a lot to other people. He was good at it. But he made you enjoy it too. Very much like Tom Sawyer. It's a little early for me to talk so much about him. I miss him so much, and hard to think of him in the past tense. He's very much present here tonight, and I see reflection of you, with friendship. Obviously, he inspired. He was good at that. He made people feel at ease very quickly. He made friends very quickly. Unusual ability. And I think he always had it. So, to rock tonight, I'm so glad you came, Steve Bagnini, that you put this all together. I just wanted to say one last thing. One of the lessons that my father really tried to instill in us is that a lot of our problems could be solved if we just worked together and reasoned together. And that community was the most important thing for people to learn how to do, because we're often so much in our little separate lives, our separate businesses, our separate worries and concerns. But then when a community is built, there's a chance for all of us. And Rock really believed that. On his deathbed, I was just amazed that he started to talk about community. The first thing he did when the oncologist said to him, this is it, Rock. There's nothing else we can do. The first thing he did was say the first line of the Serenity Prayer. You know what that is? Yeah. A lot of people here do tonight because he had a strong community. Give me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. He did this, and he did it with such grace. And then when he realized this was it, it could be any moment now, it could be the next morning, as it was, he started to talk to us about how there's so many little groups of people, little groups of his friends that don't interact, that don't intersect. And he always had this vision that maybe a lot more of those circles would intersect and come together. Maybe this is a place, maybe this is a good time to start. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
More music coming up too. So I have one more thing I would like to read for you. And after I read this, make some acknowledgments, then we're going to have Danny